So honestly, I don't think this stuff is going anywhere anytime soon. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about where we're at in the world right now with this whole coronavirus COVID-19 thing. Everything that I'm about to say is my personal opinion by my own experience and my own personal thoughts. This junk ain't going nowhere no time soon. I personally just went through a COVID experience. I tested negative. I'm gonna put that out there right now. I tested negative. My test did not come back positive. But the things that you have to go through when you go through this process, it really just made me really now have a full understanding of it's not going anywhere no time soon, because everything with it is all over the place. Like, our government does not have it under control. There's nothing that's straight across the board, and it's just not going anywhere anytime soon. So I was feeling sick again. That's just because it was when, I don't know about anywhere else, but in Georgia, we had like a really bad weather drop. Like literally it was like 90 degrees one day, and the next freaking day it was 60 degrees and it was started to get cold. It hit like that. There was no easing into it. It was the next day. Me leaving the gym, didn't have a jacket or anything on. I was like, oh God, it's freaking freezing out here. Like, what's going on? 2 days after that, started feeling bad. I had a sore throat. I was like really tired, kind of fatigued. You know, the normal things that go along when you're about to catch a cold, or even the flu, because it is about to start flu season. I'm like, okay, let me knock this out before anything happens, because I already know what's going on. I already know what it is. I left the gym half naked, and the temperature dropped. The same thing that happens every year. Started doping up on NyQuil. That was on a Wednesday. Like afternoon is when I started kind of feeling like kind of sick. That Thursday didn't feel that well, but I had a lot of stuff to do, so I really couldn't like be still. I had to still do things that I had to do. So then got through Thursday. Thursday was like, felt like really bad. Friday was able to just not do anything. Was just able to just sit at home, rest, not do anything. If I would have been able to do that on that Thursday, I probably actually would have felt better by that Friday. But because I couldn't, on that Friday, I actually got to rest. My headache started to kind of go away. My sore throat really wasn't as bad anymore. I wasn't as tired because I was actually able to rest. I posted on social media about like not feeling that well on Thursday, and someone who I was around that previous Saturday, so mind you, this is Thursday, Friday, I was around this person on Friday, on Saturday before, told me that they weren't feeling well either, and they were like, oh, I went and got a test. And I was like, oh, did your test come back positive? And they were like, I don't know yet, don't have the results. When I get my results, I'll let you know. Bet. So then Friday, they reach back out to me and they say, hey, I got a test. My test was positive. So now I'm like, oh man, maybe it's not just like a regular cold or the regular flu. It could be COVID, because this person is telling me that they tested positive for COVID and I was around them a week prior. So I'm like, okay, gotta go get a COVID test. At that point, it's like, okay, now I need to quote unquote fully quarantine. Like not going anywhere, like, you know, doing what I'm supposed to do when you find out you've been around someone who has COVID. Scheduled to get a COVID test that Saturday. Looking up all the stuff online. When you look up the symptoms are literally the same symptoms of a regular cold, of the regular flu. it's like, according to that list of symptoms, I had COVID. Like, hands down, this list, oh yeah, you have COVID. Then on like the website, and like I went through CVS to get my test, so like they'll tell you, like, as soon as you find out if you've been around someone who tested positive for COVID, you have to immediately let anyone who you know that you've been around since that person, you have to let them know. So I'm like, okay, there was 3 people that I was around that without a mask that I've been around since that person. And so me, I immediately didn't even like care about myself. Honestly, I'm not even gonna hold you. I'm a pretty healthy person. I was like, you know, being naive again, because there are young people that this disease is, or this sickness is a really bad case. I was like, oh yeah, I was like, I'm good. I was more worried about the people that I was around, because I was around 2 people that were older than me, one of which has underlying health conditions. And then I was around like one of my friends who gets very anxious quickly with things. So I was like, oh my God, like I have to call them, like they're gonna start freaking. So, and mind you, I haven't even had my test yet, or let alone got it back. But you still have to tell these people. It's really weird, that feeling when you have to call someone and be like, hey, just letting you know, I was around someone who recently tested positive for COVID, so now I'm gonna go get a test. I think you should too. It's a very weird conversation to have. And it's a very weird conversation to have, especially when you don't even know if you have it. It's like you're doing a presumptuous call, but you kind of have to. Call the people I was around, let them know. Saturday, when got my test, they said it'd take 2 to 3 days. It's literally, you go through a drive-through and they give you this stuff, and then you like do the test yourself. And so I'm in my car and I'm doing it, and the lady is just watching me from like far away. And she's like, you're not sticking it up far enough. You're not sticking it up far enough. And I'm like, okay, so like how far? You basically have to stick it up your nose until you like kind of like start to choke, trying to like cough. That's how they know that it's up far enough. And then you take it out and then you put it in the other side of your nose the same way until, if she tells you you're not sticking it up far enough, or until you like start to cough, because you know it starts to choke you a little bit. And then you take it and you put it in this test tube. Now, granted, how science works and all this kind of stuff, this little test tube, it already has like some kind of liquidy like stuff in it. And then I'm putting this thing, this Q-tip in there, and then putting it in a little bag, and then I'm putting it in, you know, like an outside mailbox that's like on the side of a building. I'm taking it and putting my baggie in there with like 20 other baggies, because it's a drive-through, so people are just doing it outside their drive at the CVS, and then you put it in there, and it's like, the whole thing is very weird. And then even with taking the test, this is one reason why I say it's not going anywhere, is apparently there are 3 types of tests: a 15-minute rapid test, a test that takes 2 to 3 days, and then a 7-day test. Why is there not one test? Like, why is there just not one test across the board? One 15-minute test, one test that takes 2 to 3 days. Why is there 3 different tests? That's one reason that made me realize that this isn't going anywhere, because it's why there's so many different tests. Then when you look up the test and when you take the test, they tell you when you take the test, it's not 100%. You can get a false positive. You can get a false negative. It can come back invalid. So what's the point of this test? You're telling me that it's not 100%. You're telling me that it could be a false positive. It could be a false negative. So basically, what's the point of the test? Like, I don't understand. Like, when you take a HIV test, it's yes or no. When you take a STD test, it's yes or no. Like, how is it invalid? How is it a false positive? How is it a false negative? It either is what it is or it isn't. That's the other thing that made me realize, like, this just really isn't going anywhere, because they can't put the security and the knowledge that they have, they're either not giving it to us, for one, or they're not putting the security for us to feel positive about taking the test. So a lot of people are just going to be like, well, if the test is all of that, I might as well not even do it. I might as well just stay home and just fight it out. I mean, because when you think about it, they're telling you the test is not 100%. They're telling you the test can be here nor there. That was the second thing. The third thing that makes me realize that this isn't going anywhere is because they tell you when you take the test, you know how like everyone in the world has like not had a COVID test, right? And right now we're all under quarantine, essentially. They want everyone to basically stay home unless you really have to leave. But if you do, wear your mask. So that is the rules and regulations for a person who has not been tested for COVID, to their knowledge has not been around anybody who has COVID, and who feels perfectly fine. That's the rules and regulations for what the world is supposed to be right now. If you have even found out that you've been around someone who has tested positive for COVID, but you're showing no symptoms, so you decide not to go, the rules and regulations that apply to you are you need to quarantine for at least 14 days. If you have to go somewhere, wear your mask. That's for someone who knows or finds out that they've been around someone who has COVID, but decides not to get a test. If you go and you get a test and your test comes back negative, you still have to quarantine for 14 days. But if you have to leave, wear your mask. If your test comes back negative, which is like what happened with me. Even though my test was negative, I still had to quarantine. I had to call my job. I couldn't go to work. I had to quarantine for 14 days, even though my test said I was negative. And I just had what I normally would have had, a little cold, little sniffles because the weather changed like it does every time of year. If you take a COVID test and your test comes back positive, you are supposed to quarantine for 14 days. Only go to the emergency room if you're having symptoms to an extreme case, like you're having extreme trouble breathing, all that. Outside of that, stay home, self-medicate, quarantine. But if you have to leave, because they're not forcing you to stay home, they don't have like people outside in like those outbreak suits making sure you don't leave. They're not taking people who are testing positive for COVID and like putting them like in some bubble like they did the NBA players. It's just, if you test positive and you're feeling sick, stay home, quarantine, self-medicate. But if you have to leave, just wear your mask, because they tell us that the mask, if you're sick, it keeps you from getting other people sick because the particles in the air. I 100% believe that. I 100% believe all of this. This is where it gets tricky. How does the same rule apply for all 4 of those scenarios? A person who hasn't gotten tested for COVID feels fine. A person who has been notified that they've been around someone who has COVID, but they choose not to get tested. A person who gets tested and their test is negative. And a person who gets tested and their test is positive. Across the board, the rules and regulations behind it is just quarantine for 14 days, and if you have to leave, wear your mask. How does the same thing apply for a person who tests positive for COVID and a person who doesn't? Like, it's not going anywhere no time soon. They don't have any type of control over it. Like, it's never gonna go anywhere. Like, I personally think it is going to be at least on a minimum 2022 before we get back to our normal lives. And I know with everything going on with the election and all this, and again, whatever, you can vote for whoever you want to vote for, neither party seems to have a hold on this. And then again, my personal experience going through this and seeing how it's handled, it ain't going nowhere no time soon. They just don't have a grasp on it. It's too all over the place. And when something is too all over the place, it's never going to get solved, like ever, because it's going to be the same way that it's been. Oh, we'll get a little better, and then it's going to spike, and then it's going to go back to square one. And then something else is going to happen, and it's going to go back to square one. Like, me going through this experience made me realize we might as well get used to how things are, because I really don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. That's just my personal experience. You guys let me know in the comments what you think. Your experience, have you had COVID? Been around someone who had COVID? Are you actually staying in the house and quarantining and only leaving if you have to? Or are you going out and enjoying your life? Let me know, because I really, this is a very serious thing going on in our world. I'm even gonna say the country, in our world right now. And like I said, my own personal experience going through this, yeah, it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be a long while. But let me know what you think in the comments, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And let's talk about it. Bye.